We're live.
We're live?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome everybody to the second budget workshop for the 2021-22 budget season. Mr. Sloika, I will turn it over to you.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Kearns. We'll start right off by saying thank you to everyone out there for watching our budget workshop tonight. And we'll start right off with our tax levy limit calculation. Some of these things you've seen before. This one actually is new. We just filed it in the State Comptroller's Office is required. I'll point you very quickly down to the bottom right corner. Our 2% tax cap is actually 1.79, as you can see. Which allows us to raise just over $2 million in our current tax levy. So we can go from our current levy of $112,837,000 to approximately $114,858. So that's our tax levy limit calculation, and that's what we could actually adjust our tax roll if need be to support our budget. This is an update, as you saw. As we said, we had some people still moving around with our budget. If you remember from our last presentation, our salaries were at 3.08% increase, and now they're at 2.19. So we did have some positions that you will see on the next slide, which I'll point out. We actually lost 2 teaching positions through attrition this year. We have 12 teacher retirements that will be replaced at lower salaries, and 1 buildings and grounds retirement also replaced at a lower salary. So that's why you see the salaries are slightly down. The next, obviously, benefits goes right along with that. Actually, the benefits was at 2.16% increase, and now it's at 2.02. Actually, again, slightly down. Here's what's in our benefits. Here's our methodology. Here's what we're talking about. We have an increase in health insurance rates again at 5%. You saw this from our last presentations. Teachers retirement system, we're hanging right about 10%. And ERS, the employees retirement system, we're going to hang it at 16.2%. And of course, you have the increase in FICA and Medicare, obviously, to go across with any increase in salaries. And this is just a graphical representation of where the teachers retirement system rates have been since 2014-15 budget up till our 21-22 budgets. As you can see, it's kind of an S wave, but not quite. But you can see that's why it's important to have reserves, because sometimes you'll get those years where all of a sudden they spike. You see that 17.53% in 14-15. Here's a graphic representation of the employees retirement system rates as well, and you can see going up a little under 2%. It's going to 16.2 from 14.6. But again, it was as high as 14-15 at 20.1%. Health insurance, here's our representation of our health insurance for those benefits that we went over. You can see this year, for next year, we're estimating we're going to spend about $19.2 million on health insurance across the district for both our active and our retirees. The next is the special education. Again, this is no change from our last presentation. Still down 7.92%. And the reasoning is actually in years past, PTEC was actually in the special education budget. And it really didn't or shouldn't have been there. We talked with a few people at BOCES, because actually BOCES is the one who put it there. It actually belonged in our instructional budget. And now with the ESSA and transparency reporting, we're now modifying our budget to report it correctly. So we can now be compared to others across the state and across the country. And obviously, we had a decrease in BOCES placement again due to reduced needs. Debt service, again, same thing as last time. We'll show you a slide. Basically, what's happening here is our debt service payments, although they're going down, our state aid actually has dropped off. You can see from $1.4 million to $199,590. This, of course, has been going on since 1819. You've seen the slide, I believe, since 1819 as well. It's just been updated. And basically, we were using our debt service reserve. You can see on the almost to the bottom of the page the $637,000 and the $900,000 for this year to make up for that state aid. So luckily, we have the reserves to be able to do that. And in 2021, which is this year, we may not need to use all that $637,000. That's yet to be seen. So we may be able to keep going in out years. Our transportation, as we talked about before, only up 1%, $108,000. Basically, we've been combining runs. We've been changing the size of the vehicles to maximize our capacity. We had a very nice meeting again this morning with our contractor who takes care of our busing. So I think we're on top of that, and I think we're going to end up with a real nice year next year. Buildings and grounds, as you'll see, again, the same exact number, 1.77% increase, or approximately $92,000. This is the exact slide that you saw from our last one. Montebello kitchen floor is being taken care of by our cafe budget. The other thing here that's actually new is the high school domestic hot water generator for approximately $50,000, which will actually save us quite a bit of money because we will no longer be running those large boilers all summer long to get hot water now in the high school. So that's a good thing. And the rest you can see: concrete repair, casework, painting and sealing throughout, and that's just ongoing work that we're always doing. So there's real no new initiatives here except that hot water generator. Here's the three lines that come together: technologies, BOCES, other. You'll see the BOCES other. I'll point that out right now. You'll see it going up by $470,000, but remember, $400,000 of that was the P-TECH that got moved out of special education and down to the BOCES line. So that line item really only went up by $70,000. The rest was nothing more than a transfer. As you can see here, technology is moving of computer-related expenditures from individual school budgets. As I mentioned before, because of ESSA and transparency reporting, things need to be accounted for district-wide instead of just in the building expenditures. And we had things like our copy machines and other equipment items like desks and chairs and that kind of thing that really need to be expensed district-wide. So our comparisons are correct. So that's what we did. We modified the budget again. So we'll be compared correctly to others. And the capital reserve, as you saw, the $700,000, that was for a budget resolution that was passed a few years ago. And the other, and you can see that's actually down $278,000. And I'll point to the next slide, where you would ask for an itemization of what it was. Here's a full itemization of what it was in comparison between the 2 years. You can see the bulk of it is plan balance, and plan balance is the monies that we use to run through the summertime and to keep our cash flow going. Because the summertime obviously is when we have most of our debt service payments as well, but we don't have any revenue coming in from taxes or state aid. Supplies and equipment, of course, are down because they were actually moved. You can see the 2 footnotes on the bottom. Equipment moved from the schools to building and grounds budgets. And you'll also just note the second one there there's another other there, under other, which includes advertising, elections, graduations, student activities, positions, and our EAP program, which is actually down as well in cost. So that is a complete itemization of the $5.6 million that's estimated for next year to be spent.
So, a question, Steve?
Sure. By all means.
On the textbooks, did the district actually buy new textbooks this past year?
The district actually did buy some new textbooks. Yes, we did. You can see it's actually down for next year because basically with the COVID going fully virtual, a lot of that money was now shifted into virtual items for software and hardware as well. So yes.
So you actually did buy $322,000, or you basically shifted over there?
One of the things that I would ask you to remember too is those textbooks aren't just for us that you see there. Remember that we're responsible for buying textbooks for some of our other schools as well.
But with the schools basically being closed and virtual and everything else, we're just wondering the need to invest this past year.
That's our administrator's choice, and again, I'll remind you that that a lot of schools weren't closed, although we may have our buildings weren't necessarily open. A lot of other schools were still active that we buy textbooks for.
Do you have a breakdown of that?
I'm sure we do, yes.
There's also listed one time, Steve, conferences and so forth for this past year. Was that money utilized, or was it shifted to someplace else, or what happened to that money?
Conferences, money for conferences.
No, I believe the conference money was, I'll have to go back and take a look. A lot of our conferences were virtual, so we did still spend some money on conferences. I can go back and take a peek at just how much.
Okay, and then the question on last year, I don't have the number in front of me, but it was new furniture for the buildings and so forth. I was wondering, since they were closed, was that budget line utilized, or was it shifted to someplace else?
A lot of that money was actually shifted to actually someplace else to store the furniture, believe it or not. And we're actually down now, so we only have one storage unit left that we're storing things in, and hopefully soon we'll be able to no longer be paying for that.
This presentation, I assume, will be sent out to all of us.
It's already posted.
You'll email us all a copy of this presentation?
It's posted on Board Docs under the budget work.
Okay.
Right.
Or, I mean, I'll let you finish before I ask you to go back, Steve. I mean, is there more?
Go ahead. Here's the other side of the budget. Obviously anticipated revenues and how we plan to fund our budget. And a few of the things that you see here highlighted in red going down, health services and interest on investments. What we'll see is basically, one is the closure of Sacred Heart School, which provided us with quite a bit of revenue from health services. And obviously interest on investments, interest rates are extremely low right now, so we modified that as well. Next is our state aid section. You'll notice there, our building aid is down, as you saw on the expense side as well. We discussed that. This is actually the governor's proposal now, and what we were able to do is we parsed out those 7 to 9 expense-based aids that he rolled up into one grant-based aid and then cut. We were able to work with our local BOCEs and the New York State ASBO and actually parse these out so we can now compare them, just like we did last year, if you remember. We did the same thing. And so when you look at this, it looks like, oh, okay, we're getting about $70,000 more in state aid than we normally would have for this year, which would be a good thing. But the one thing I would point out is, remember that take a look at the top line called foundation aid. It's been frozen. Everything else on that page is expense driven. So in other words, if we don't spend it, we don't get reimbursed. For example, the BOCES line item, you'll notice it's 1.9 to 2.5 million. Well, that's a reimbursement because we spent quite a few dollars this year on Chromebooks and laptops and other peripherals that we needed to be able to go virtual and do it quite quickly and actually quite well. Thank you, Eric, again, for those to you. So just keep in mind, again, foundation aid has been frozen. And one of the other things that I would point out again, and I'm sure I know you can't see me, but I know you have the onboard magazine that you get. And the one scary thing still out there is the school funding proposal relies heavily on the new federal funds. So although we're actually sitting, I think, in a pretty good place right now, if you will, in a kind of wait and see pattern to see now what happens, I think our expense side of our budget is actually pretty good and pretty solid. So as we move forward, we'll kind of take a wait and see what happens with the New York State Legislature and see how that goes forward. As we move on here, the use of debt service reserve, you can see, as we talked about, we're moving $900,000 in to take care of the state aid that we knew we wouldn't get on our capital projects. And the use of other reserves, you can see going down to balance the budget. Here's our debt service slide again, just as before. And obviously, the use of reserves is a one-time revenue to balance that budget. You can see that's that bottom line at 3.7 million, down slightly, 250,000 from what we needed to do this year, which again is also a good thing. So our total budget on both sides of the scale are going up about 0.5%. As you can see, 0.56 of a percent. And again, I will say this budget still isn't cut in stone. Again, I think we're in a good place. I believe we still have a few more positions within curriculum and instruction and a few others that we're looking at that might be modified, that actually might take salaries down slightly again in benefits. So again, I think we're in a really, really good place.
Okay.
I'll go and I'll just summarize here just for a second. And here's what we have so far. We're looking at so far a tax levy increase of just under 1% at 0.98. From a budget increase of 0.56 for a total proposed budget of $144,842,711. And that would conclude the presentation. Thank you very much. I'll take questions from that.
Okay. Yeah. So so Steve, you touched on exactly what I was going to ask about, which is teacher retirees or any changes to FTEs. Now, at the beginning of the presentation, you had yellow and you scroll back. Nope, the next slide. Nope, the next one.
Yeah, sorry, the explanation.
Yep. Okay. So you've got -2 FTEs through attrition. You have 12 retirees being replaced at low salary and 2 other retirees at low salary. Do you, and I think you just alluded to it, but do you expect several more retirees in addition to the 12 that are already listed here?
I don't expect several. Right now, I believe there's, I believe only 2 more that possibly are on the radar.
Okay. And if they will retire, if these individuals did retire, would they be replaced at lower salary, or would they be attrition and not replaced at all?
I believe one of those positions would probably not have to be replaced at this time. And the other one, I'm not 100% sure of right now.
Okay. And then all the way at the back end of your presentation, the current proposed tax increase is 0.98%. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And as just a refresher for everybody, last year we had a tax increase of 1%. Is that correct?
1.25.
1.25? Okay.
Just want everybody sees it as I move forward to that page. And everybody had to take Dramamine to get to the presentation.
Okay. Okay. Any questions? Any other questions? No? Letting Steve off the hook pretty easy here?
Steve, I think his pencil's very sharp. Keep it going.
We're doing it. We're doing it.
You're doing it. That's right. Thank you.
All right, you're very welcome. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great evening. I'll stop presenting now. Thank you. Eric?
All right, thank you, Steve. Okay. Okay. So the budget workshop is complete. We'll move directly into our regular board meeting. Is Heather on?
I'm here. She's here. She's there.
Oh, she's there in person.
Yes.
Okay. All right, then. At this time, I would like to call to order the regular meeting of the Suffern Central Board of Education for Tuesday, March 2nd, 2021. Let the record reflect all board members are currently present. The time is 7:43. I will read into the record our motion for executive session. Can you guys hear me okay? Because I'm getting a little bit of feedback.
Yeah, we hear you fine.
Okay. All right. So executive session took place prior to the regular meeting. So as we've done for almost the past year, I'll read what we discussed into the record. The chair will entertain a motion to go into executive session for the purposes of reviewing with school attorney the matter of Douglas Adams versus Board of Education of the Suffern Central School District, reviewing with the acting superintendent of schools and school attorney the matter of Eric Rizzo versus Suffern Central School District, reviewing with acting superintendent of schools, assistant superintendent of human resources, and school attorney, employment history of pedagogical employee 03022021A. Reviewing with the acting superintendent of schools, assistant superintendent of human resources, and school attorney, employment history of non-pedagogical employee 03022021B. Reviewing with the acting superintendent of schools, assistant superintendent of human resources, and school attorney, Christine Druss versus Suffern School District. Reviewing with the acting superintendent of schools, assistant superintendent of human resources, and school attorney, SEA grievances 1.2021, 5.2021, and 7.2019. Reviewing with the acting superintendent of schools, assistant superintendent of human resources, and school attorney contract negotiations with RAM bargaining unit. And reviewing with the acting superintendent of schools and assistant superintendent of human resources tenure candidates for 2021. Okay, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we want to have a moment of silence, so maybe everybody could please stand again. A moment of silence for Olivia Lee and Stephen Sannon. Thank you. Yeah, 1.08, the student report.
So, hi everyone. On Wednesday, February 24th, the following students are recipients of Rockland Community College's 2021 Black Achievement Awards. So the following were Joyce Amati, Carhala Andre, Chanel Candave, Bradley Cressy, Dylan Decker, Travis Delaney, David Emmanuel, Isaiah Emmanuel, Kennedy Hutchins, Sally Magden, Olivia Nelson, Natalie Noel, Keila Regis, Malcolm Solon, and Gabrielle Baffel. We are so proud of these students for being recognized for their academic excellence and commitment to community service. Also, the Suffern Pause for Change Club released their district-wide video of student pictures showcasing why they love their pets and what kind of pet they would like to have. The video can be found on the Pause for Change Instagram page on their videos.
Hi everyone, tonight I'll be giving some updates on different clubs and sports in our school. So first, all students are invited to make art with the National Art Honor Society all month long. So March is Youth Art Month, and the Art Honor Society will be posting virtual and in-person activities for students of all ages. On Saturday, March 13th, the SAT will be administered at the high school. Last week, Curran Skoglund was named Rockland Scholar Athlete for boys swimming. Curran has finished in either first or second place for all of his individual events this year and was recognized for his athletic and academic success. Additionally, Luke Leali finished second in the section for diving, and Luke has also earned all section honors. For the season, varsity boys basketball and ice hockey both went undefeated, and lastly, the boys and girls track teams placed first in their final meet at the Palisades Center. A special shout out to Coach Dempsey and his team for putting together multiple track meets at the Palisades Center, giving our athletes an opportunity to safely compete this season.
All right, excellent. Thank you both very much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your night. And 1.09. This is minutes of the special meeting for January 26, 2021. Do I have a motion?
Move.
Mr. Cairns, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. McKenzie? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against? Any abstentions?
Yeah, actually, I have to abstain from that, Matt. I wasn't there.
From the January 26th one?
That's correct. The special meeting, I was unable to attend.
Okay. Angus, I think that was the 2-7 meeting.
You're right. My fault. That was the one where we had to vote on the sports. I wasn't there.
That was the 2-7.
2-7. Okay.
So you're good for this one.
Okay.
Okay. 1.10, minutes of the regular meeting for February 2nd, 2021. Do I have a motion?
Moved.
Mr. McKenzie, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Shapiro? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. All those against? Any abstentions? 1.11, minutes of the special meeting, February 7th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
Move.
Mr. Cairns? Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Shapiro? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against? Any abstentions?
I abstain.
Mr. McKenzie abstains. Okay. 1.12, acting superintendent comments.
Thank you. I have a couple of general announcements tonight. First, our district safety plan has been updated. There were some legal requirements related to the pandemic that required updating the safety plan. It's currently posted on our website, and a public hearing will be held on these updates on April 6th at 7:30 at the regular board meeting. In addition, for this year's school board candidate election, the 2021 school board candidate petitions and financial disclosure statements are not now available. They can be picked up here at Hilburn, and the petitions are due back on April 19th at 5 p.m. In addition, I would like to recognize our marigolds for the month of February. And marigolds, like the flower in a garden, like how a marigold serves as a companion plant, helping the flowers grow around it in a garden. The marigolds are staff members who have supported their colleagues and helped them grow. And we have staff members that were nominated by their colleagues. We're just waiting for that. Here we go. So congratulations to all of these staff members who have been recognized and nominated by their colleagues for their support and contributions during the past month. In the spring, I'll be making a donation in honor of all of our Marigold recipients to each of our school gardens to plant some marigolds and support our gardens. So I'm incredibly proud of these staff members and to those that nominated them. This has been, a real bright spot in what has otherwise been a very, a difficult year, a difficult month. The last week and a half at Suffern High School has been one of the hardest of my 29-year professional career. These staff members have been lights through this time. The students, the families and friends of Olivia and Stephen, our hearts go out to you. And we just really, it's been a tough time, and it's very reassuring to know that we have those around us who serve as lights and help us to get through these times. And that's all I have for now.
Thank you. .13 public participation on action items only. Heather, do we have anything for this portion of the meeting?
No, not at this time.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's go to action items. Action items 2.01 through 2.19. I would ask for a consent agenda. Does anybody have any items they wish to pull at this time?
2.10, please.
2.10. Any others? Nope. Okay. So then I will ask for a consent agenda. This will be for action items 2.01 through 2.09 and 2.11 through 2.19. So do I have a motion for this consent agenda?
Move.
Mr. Cairns, their second?
Second.
Mr. McKenzie? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those against? Any abstentions? All right. 2.10, this is the resolution on the use of district credit cards. So do I have a motion for 2.10?
Moved.
Mr. Shapiro, is there a second?
Second.
Mr. McKenzie, discussion.
Sure. So I'm from the
No discussion?
New Jersey Rotary Club, and
Okay. 2.10, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All those against?
Nay.
Mr. McKenzie?
we've had more attendance.
Any abstentions?
Fundraising was
Okay, motion passes. Okay, that will conclude action items. We don't have any administrative reports. There's nothing for 3.01. Okay, so we're going to go down to discussion items 5.01. This is a discussion for a general COVID update. Do we want, does anybody want to open this conversation?
I'll open it.
Mr. Shapiro?
Yes. Obviously we're all aware of a lot of great things happening in terms of Johnson & Johnson, and now the announcement late this afternoon that Merck is now working with them to get the vaccine out. So there's a lot of good things happening. I wish the same could be said in terms of what's going on in the schools, and for the most part, the elementary school team seems to be pretty good. But I know at the high school, it's disheartening to see the number of positive cases that have suddenly erupted. And I don't know what the reason is, but all I know is that it hurts. It hurts, obviously, the parents. It hurts the kids. It hurts the staff. And I don't know. We just have to continue to be vigilant, and we have to still follow all of the same precautions. And I know that we care. I know that Suffern is a community that cares. It cares about people who are needy, and it also cares about people who are going through very tough times. And I just want to make sure that we have to continue to care, but also act smartly, act sharp. Really follow everything that we're supposed to be following in terms of keeping our health in good shape, and also in terms of just making sure that this 2020 was bad enough, and it looks like it's going to be half of 2021 as well. But brighter times are coming. But it is a concern, and just wanted to get it out there.
Yeah, I think that anybody that's paid attention to what's been going on with our numbers in the district, will see that we've certainly spiked as of the last week or two, and it's clear that a lot of those numbers center around a lot of our sports teams at the high school, and that's not and I don't say that as a blame. It's just an unfortunate fact. I'll tell you, part of the reason why I'm sitting here and not sitting in my regular seat in public is because I'm on quarantine, because I have a student athlete who currently has COVID, and it's in our house, and I'm quarantined. What I would say is, are we doing all the right things to protect all of our students, to protect all of our teachers during this spike that we're having? Is there anything that we should be looking at changing for the time being? Is there anything that we should look at doing differently? And I don't know the answer to that. I don't know if there is or there isn't. But what we've seen over the last 7 to 10 days certainly warrants a discussion about it, especially at the high school. I think you could argue that the high school really is an issue of its own right now, because as far as I'm concerned, we don't see these numbers at the middle school or at the elementary level. It all seems to be centered at the high school. So, if other board members have any comments, otherwise, Lee, I'd like to know what the thoughts are from administration's point of view. And if we're looking at this sort of as a blip, as a spike that we just hope is going to go back down and life will continue, or are there things that we should be looking to do in the short term to really help mitigate it getting any worse?
Make some comments?
Say again?
Can I make a comment on that?
Yes, of course.
Okay. First of all, I appreciate Paul and Matt's comments. It's really an interesting question in terms of where we are with our cases. I think, the courts, I think, have a direct role in that, with the recent spike. But I also think you have to look at the other side of it, sports having value. And, I go back to when we had a discussion about the winter sports, and I think how important they are from a psychological standpoint, a social standpoint, and a physical standpoint for our students to do. And I think you balance that, or you try to balance that, by limiting the risk as much as you can. And I think that goes to your point, Matt, and reading through all the protocols that all the sports have, I was impressed, because a lot of schools that have sports don't have that level of intervention, level of protocol. And I think what we're seeing now as these cases are increasing, we're seeing these restrictions and protocols working. A lot of these teams on pause, the cases are still going up because of exposures that were in the past. But I think, if you can limit those kids, limit those exposures, and limit exposure to vulnerable populations, then I think we can still continue with our sports, which are very important, but also being as safe as possible. I also think, it's important to note sports are voluntary. The coaches, the athletes, and the families make their decision to play a sport based on their risk. And I think that's an important thing as well, that, you give them a choice and try to make it as safe as possible. So that's really my perspective. And I always also look at big picture stuff too. And I think looking at the country in the last 3 to 4 weeks, I do think I am very cautiously optimistic that we're seeing levels now where there's a large amount of people who were infected in the past, and we're starting to get these levels of vaccination up. And I think it's really reflecting in the numbers of cases going down nationwide, and certainly serious cases. And you look at the cases in nursing homes and hospitalizations and deaths in nursing homes, especially, going way down. I think it's a very encouraging thing. But also, back to your point, I think we still got to be very diligent. I still think we got to look at these things from all aspects. And are there things we can do better? I mean, that's definitely something we should look at. But I think in general, the number of cases are up, and that's concerning. But I think the process is sort of working in a sense that we're trying to mitigate that, trying to restrict vulnerable populations and move forward, getting that benefit of the sports, and hopefully taking it further into more in-person school, as the next step, to go forward. So those are my comments.
All right, thank you. I agree with a lot of what you said there. And I just want to confirm, I'm not, in my comments, I'm not advocating for not having sports. In fact, we just approved the resolution, for winter sports, for the high risk sports. So it's just a question of, is there anything we could just be doing better? And maybe the answer to that's no. Maybe the answer is we're doing the best we absolutely can, and these things are going to happen, and it's a risk that we take, and that the athletes take, and that the coaches take. Maybe that's the answer. But, it's at least worth the conversation. Don?
How many Suffern sports teams are currently in quarantine at this point because of the virus?
So I have a number of pieces of information that I'd like to share. I can answer your question, but it's sort of in context with some more information. So I don't know if you want me to go ahead or wait, Matt?
No problem.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I think it's important to note a couple of things. So we have now had 16 positive student cases at Suffern High School since Saturday. So today's Tuesday. So since Saturday, we're at 16 cases. I do want to make it really clear. I think this is really important and kind of blew my mind when I thought about it this way. Since February 12th was 18 days ago. In the last 18 days, Suffern High School students have physically been in the building for 3 of them. So we have had 3 days of in-person learning in the last 18 days between weekends, President's Week, and snow. This is not spreading at school.
Can I just ask you, I just have a quick question about what you said there, Lee, I'm sorry. 16 positive student cases since Saturday.
Yes, that's what we said yesterday. That doesn't count the ones from the week before.
I'm sorry, say that again, that doesn't count?
It doesn't count the ones from the week before.
Okay, and
Okay.
what about teachers?
2.
Okay, so 16 positive students and 2 positive staff members.
Correct.
Okay.
So as I say, in the last 18 days, school has been in session for 3, physically in session for 3 of those days. 15 days out of school, 3 days in school. Of the 16 students that were positive since Saturday, 11 of those students are remote. 5 of them are in-person learning. 13 of the students play sports. 3 of them do not play sports. Of the 13 who play sports, 11 play high-risk sports, and 2 play sports that were not deemed high-risk. The actual answer to your question, Don, how many teams are in quarantine, I believe at the moment is 4. Just to put that in perspective, in the fall, we also had a period of time when we had 4 teams in quarantine. We had a JV and a varsity of one sport, and then girls and boys of another sport. So it's actually the same number we had in the fall for sports that were not deemed high risk that were being played outdoors. I think one of the more interesting different statistics is more of these students were symptomatic than we've seen most of the year. 13 of the 16 students have displayed some level of symptoms as opposed to many of the asymptomatic cases we saw earlier in the year. So that's kind of any questions about that?
I have a question. So you said that these positives are not happening at school through contact tracing through the Department of Health. Have we found any common thread to this? Is there anything that we could sort of figure out what's been going on that people are contracting this virus?
I said it didn't happen at school, meaning it wasn't transmission that occurred for the most part in our buildings. What we do know about teenagers is most importantly, they're teenagers and they act like teenagers. Many times kids who play sports are also friends outside of sports and they spend time together outside of sports. And it is quite likely that many of these students spend time with each other outside of their sport. I do want to go back to something about the high-risk sports though. For the winter high-risk sports and the fall 2 sports, if you recall, the Department of Health added a couple extra documents that we haven't had in the past. One of those documents is a code of conduct relating to school sports. This is a statewide document that's being used all across the state. This is not specific to Suffern Central. But I do want to point out 2 of the comments that appear on that, and I've already spoken with Mr. Guccione about the importance of stressing this to our student athletes and to our coaches and to the parents of our student athletes. On this code of conduct, which all of our fall 2 sports students will be signing and all of our winter students have already signed, it does say that they initial that they have pledged to not participate in social gatherings, parties, or other activities which are known to increase the potential spread of COVID-19. And then further down the document, they sign off that as a student athlete, I understand that I have a personal responsibility to take steps to protect those around me, working to limit the spread of COVID-19 and ensure a safe environment for everyone in the school and community as well as my own. And I think that right now with this spike, that bears repeating. When I was speaking to Mr. Guccione, I asked him really the exact same question that you just asked before is, are we doing everything we can? And he reminded me of these excerpts from this document that yes, we can do everything we can. And I'm just going to use an example. If anyone watched the live stream of the wrestling and you see them keep coming out there and cleaning in between the athletes, I mean, it was really, when we talk about what precautions we're taking, our coaches and our facilities folks are following up on every one of those recommendations. They're doing what they can. If you watch our kids playing any of our live streams, they're all playing in masks. In most of the country, kids are not playing sports. In New Jersey, kids are not playing sports with masks on. 2 miles from our high school, they're playing these same sports without wearing masks. Our kids are all wearing masks. Our coaches are wearing masks. The refs are wearing masks. Everyone is doing their part with that. And I think we need everyone on board. Our coaches, our athletes are doing it when we need to. We need everyone. This is a 24/7 commitment. It's not just about while we're playing. It's about the time you spend outside of the sport as well. That making sure we're doing everything we can all the time to mitigate the spread.
Also, I wanted to ask, Lee, you said that there was 17 positive cases and 2 students, 17 teachers, 2. How many teachers are quarantined now as a result of this?
So 16 students were positive and 2 staff members. We have 30 staff members in quarantine. I'll tell you in just another instance of things that make you wonder. The CDC has a guideline that is being followed throughout the country that says that if a person is 2 weeks post their second vaccine and still within 90 days, so if they're anywhere between 2 weeks after their second vaccine and 90 days after their second vaccine and they're exposed, they don't need to quarantine. That's a national standard from the CDC. The Rockland County Department of Health has made it clear to us that our staff members who fall into that category still need to quarantine if they're exposed. So of the 30 plus teachers that were quarantined due to cases we learned about this weekend, 8 of them are 2 weeks post-vaccine and wouldn't have to quarantine if we were following the guidelines of every other place in the country except Rockland County.
Is that guideline from, and I've heard this over the last week or so. So the CDC is saying if you're between 2 weeks and 90 days of having that second dose, you can quarantine. Rockland County Department of Health is saying you do. Now, this may be semantics, but does that are we saying that applies solely to the work environment, or are they saying the quarantine is still a quarantine in the sense that you can't go out at all? You're supposed to be in your house, or are we looking at it as only come back into the schools?
It was not specific to schools.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think you're supposed to go out at all if you.
Yeah, but it's curious that the Department of Health would be saying something contrary to what everybody else in the country is supposedly following.
So I have a clarification point, and you might not know this, Lee, but it similarly after vaccination, is the DOH allowing after infection, allowing you to not quarantine as well? Because to me, there's similar circumstances. So if you just had your vaccine and you're 2 weeks out, you're protected. If you just had COVID and you're 2 weeks out, you're protected. So in my mind, really the whole situation should be treated the same in terms of quarantine. Is that happening with the DOH, or is that?
No, the DOH is allowing people who are within the 90 days of recovery from COVID do not need to quarantine if they are additionally exposed.
So that's a sort of contradiction that, is difficult to overcome in certain circumstances, because now the vaccination rates are going up, and you would hope that you can sort of capitalize on that protection. But if it's not being recognized by the DOH, that is problematic. So hopefully, with more research and they're reviewing these things, hopefully we'll be able to get to the point of recognition of vaccination as a protected state. Right? So.
Does anybody have any other points they'd like to make on this current situation regarding the spikes or the sports teams or anything like that? Because I had something else I wanted to mention here, but it's a shift in gears, so I figured we wrap this portion up first.
Quick question. What high-risk sport has the most viruses and quarantines?
I can't answer that because it could compromise the privacy of the students involved.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I can't answer it because it could compromise the privacy of the students. What I can tell you is it's for the 11 high-risk sports of the 16, the 11 who are on high-risk sports are on a total of 4 teams. But I can't tell you who's the most because it would kind of narrow things down.
So we can't know the sport.
Yes.
That's right. Yes, that's what I said.
I think.
Just out of privacy for the people involved.
Yeah. I think the community people would want to know that.
Well, I think I think everybody knows which sports are currently on are suspended. I mean, I don't think there's much issue there if you said which sports are currently not playing. That should be common knowledge, but to Lee's point, you're not going to say how many people on each team are positive.
Correct.
But which sport?
So you could, so Lee, I think it's okay to just say which sports teams are currently not playing.
The sports teams currently not playing are girls varsity and JV basketball, boys varsity basketball, and boys varsity ice hockey.
Right, but no more details beyond that.
No.
Okay. So I've got I have something I wanted to ask, and it's a bit of a change here, changing gears. I'm sure it's very premature. So I'm going to ask this question first. Have we received any guidance yet from the state about the 2021-22 school year and what that might look like, or any guidelines, expectations for in-person, hybrid, and or remote learning?
No, we haven't.
Okay, that's what I figured. Have we as a district started to think at all about potential for next year and what the teaching environment might look like for the next school year?
Yes.
Okay. So without you completely on the spot, what is administration kicking around?
So I can't answer that because it's all hypothetical, but I will say that we can't wait to have as many kids as we can back in the building.
Okay, and I think we all agree with that.
We want to be able to provide the most effective, highest quality instructional experience for our students. There are things we need from the governor, there are things we need from the legislature, but it's all anything I say is really hypothetical.
Right. No, and I understand. I respect that. I think we have an opportunity, though, to take our to take our learnings from this past year and, develop a plan or plans for next school year, depending on what the governor allows or doesn't allow. I mean, what are the chances that remote will still be an option next year? Will we still have to provide a remote option to students and families that aren't comfortable coming back into the building? I mean, do we see that as a possibility?
It's a great question.
And if that's the case, are there things that we could do differently next year, again, based on what we learned this year? So, something I was, that I was thinking, I know a lot of the situations we've run into with quarantines and having to shut buildings for a day here or a few days there revolves around staff. It's not all about the students that are on quarantine, it's about the staff members and they're being quarantined and unable to be in person. So have we ever given thought to, how should I put it, in-person instruction and remote instruction? Maybe I should call it dedicated in-person and dedicated remote instruction. So teachers that are teaching solely in person and teachers that are teaching solely remote. Are you following what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yes, that makes sense?
Yes, it makes sense. Yes, we've talked about it. It's extraordinarily complex.
Okay. I'm guessing it would, a lot of that is dependent on how many students you have remote in a certain section, in a certain grade, right? And you'd have to tailor around that.
And most importantly, they would have to be static. We wouldn't be able to provide the flexibility that we've provided all year this year to our families and students.
Right. It would be a different type of flexibility. Well, I think it would just be different because you'd have students that are 100% remote and you'd have teachers that are teaching 100% remote students versus teachers that are teaching 100% in-person students.
Right. And then what about the kids who don't want to be remote anymore, which there's...
I'm sorry.
What about the kids who change? And we've had an incredible number of kids who've changed throughout the year, sometimes because they have to, they're not feeling well. So we don't want kids who don't feel well. We've been absolutely very consistent with our families that if your child is sick, please keep them home. We can say that because we can still provide remote instruction to them when they're at home. If we no longer have that ability, that complicates that flexibility. So as I said, it has been discussed and it's not necessarily off the table if remote were to be allowed next year, but I will say that it is extremely complex and exacerbated, particularly for us at the elementary level, by the very small size of our elementary schools.
Okay. And again, I'm not asking for a definitive answer right now. These are just thoughts and comments to maybe try and get ahead of things for the next school year. That's all.
The only thing I would add to this conversation, because I think it's important for the board and the public to be aware of it, is while we're having this conversation about the spike, many of the districts around us are having conversations about bringing all students back. So I just want that on folks' radar. A lot of districts, I believe over 25 districts in Westchester are planning on bringing all students back after April vacation. A number in Rockland are talking about it, what it would look like or what they would need. And while we are talking about it as well, whatever timeline we have, I think, particularly based on the events of this past weekend, is probably going to be slowed down a little. I think there are definitely some apprehension around the events and the number of cases we had this weekend, which, as I stated earlier, didn't occur at school, but just the fact that we had so many of them, it makes people concerned. We are still working on getting our staff vaccinated. Many of our staff members have had their first vaccine. Some have had their second. Many are still have their second lined up for the month of March or even into April. We do still have a number of staff members who are waiting for their first vaccine. So all of that. So I do think we will have a timeline. I'm working with our various constituent groups, but I think you're going to see things happening in other districts, likely around that a little more quickly than we move here in Suffern. And that's really just because we're trying to be really thoughtful and think about all the angles with it. And, this spike, we're a little wrench in our flow here. So we want to make sure everyone's safe.
Before Suffern would go back to 5 days full-time school, I would hope that all of the teachers would have had the opportunity to be vaccinated before going back into the classroom.
We believe that by mid-April, just about every teacher who wants it should have had the opportunity. No one's required, they're not required to get it, and some will choose not to, and some can't get it. But everyone who wants it, we think should be pretty well set by mid-April.
All right. Are there anything else anybody has to add to this discussion? Chris and Daryl, it's a little hard for me to see you guys, so I can't tell if you have hands raised or not, or if you have anything.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay.
I'm good.
All right. Thanks, guys. All right. Okay. So let's. I guess we'll close this discussion. There's a lot of points here again that I'm sure we're going to be coming back to in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully we'll see our numbers start to go down and things get back to what we would consider normal. 6.01. These are board member comments. Does anybody have any board member comments at this time?
I do, Paul. I am.
Mr. McKenzie?
I just wanted to echo the sentiments of Ms. Weber earlier on in the meeting and extend my most sincere condolences to both the Lee and the Sannon families. It's a very difficult week we had there at Suffern. We lost two very young kids and an alumnus. And it's a very, very difficult time. I was unable to attend Olivia's wake, but I was at Stephen Sannon's. And I just wanted to say I'm very proud of our football players on all levels that attended and the coaching staff on all levels. They were very comforting to the family. They stood there arm in arm with their brother that passed. And it was very touching to be there amongst them and to see them commiserating together. And I just want to say that they should be very proud of what they did for their friend.
Thank you for that. Any other?
I would like to echo the same that Mr. McKenzie said. I was able to attend both, and it was very sad, but the support that was shown from the district, I think, and the students alike was very heartwarming to me to see that camaraderie and just show the family that we care as a district and just a community as a whole. Very unfortunate to lose anyone, but especially at these young ages. It was sad to even read this back to back, but we will get through it. It'll be tough, but we just have to hold strong and believe that we will get through this. And please, now that it's all said and done, let's not forget about the family members that are still going through it. So if we can still reach out, see if they need any assistance from us, I think now is the time to do so, because things are settling in and we cannot turn our backs on them. So thank you.
Good, thank you. Any other board member comments? Mr. Shapiro?
Yeah, I echo Darrell's comments and obviously Angus's, and I'm sure we all feel the same. That's not the way life is supposed to go. On some other issues, March is Women's History Month. We all have women in our lives, whether it's our mom, our grandmom, an aunt, a sister. So March is a pretty big month. I remember as a child, it was always tough for me because my mom and my sister and my dad all had birthdays in March. So whatever money I had saved up, by the end of the month, I had no money left. Then I married a woman whose birthday is in March, and then I had one of my daughters and her birthday is in March. So March is really big. On a completely different note, I just bought a book, and now you're all thinking, does he actually read? And the answer is yes. And it's actually a picture book, but it's more than a picture book. And if you ever have a chance to read the book, and it's a very quick read, if it takes you 7 minutes, then you're reading very slowly. It's called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. And one of the things that is written in this book is the mole asked the boy, what do you want to be when you grow up? This is the best answer I've ever heard. The boy said, kind. And if that doesn't say something, especially with everything that's been going on as of late and will probably still continue to go on, we really need to be kind. And it's really important. So I don't know, maybe I'm getting old and that's why I'm saying these things, but we really do need to be kind to each other. So to my colleagues, let's all continue to be kind. That's my comment.
Thank you for that. Any other board member comments? Okay, we'll move on then. Public participation on any district-related business.
Yeah, I have 3 emails.
How many?
3.
3? Okay.
So the first one is from Judy Bruno, the parent in the district. Good evening. A year ago, I was in a staff meeting with my principal, who told us to prepare to bring home all of our supplies, whatever we need to teach our kids via Google Classroom. We as the teachers had to learn on the fly how we were going to teach via computer. We would have to figure out how to administer lessons and tests to help our struggling students, and we did. Now, a year later, we are still doing it. A year later, I still can't believe it. I am the parent of both a high school senior and an 8th grader who beg to go into their buildings 4 days a week. My husband and I struggled with that, but we knew how important it was to be in person, not only for their education, but to just see some friends in socially distant and masked way. Socially distant and masked, those words to me don't seem to be resonating to many in our school community. My senior is a student athlete who had to be quarantined due to a positive case on the cross-country team. It seems to me that sports teams and parties are a large part of the reason why kids are being quarantined. Can't stop private parties, but you can stop sports. Perhaps they should stop. Perhaps we should go on pause until after spring break. I'm sure this is not going to be a popular statement, but maybe some of those party throwers should take a stroll through an ICU. If you want your child to return to school, they need a negative COVID test. As I said, my high school senior is a student athlete, so I don't suggest stopping sports lightly, but I think we can all agree that the health and safety of our children and our students should come first. Thank you for all you do for our children.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is from Ryan Phelps, who's a teacher in the district. I'm a teacher of 20 plus years.
Heather, can you repeat the name?
Ryan Phelps.
Okay, thank you.
High School. I am a teacher of 20 plus years at Suffern High School. This past week, I had a student test positive and was in my classroom for a total of 3 hours. 2 consecutive hours on one day. I was never told by any of the administration. I was informed by a student and felt bad that she may have exposed me. The school district feels no obligation to inform a teacher that a student that they spent 2 consecutive hours with less than a week ago tested positive. Why? Because of the CDC guidelines? What about the humanity of the situation? What about the fact that I come to work every day, am not vaccinated, and have a family at home that I'm trying to protect? I'm sure I'm not the only teacher that feels this way. The district doesn't know my situation. They don't know if my 80-year-old mother-in-law with MS lives with me. We just want to feel protected. We just want to know that you, the administration, have our best interests in mind, as well as the students. Maybe giving us more information than less would make some of us feel better. Everything is secret, and everything is stuffed into a black hole, and every now and then information is leaked out. Usually information that we already know. In that situation, the administration continues to keep us in the dark and make decisions about our own personal safety. We have a right to know if a student that was in our classrooms has tested positive, regardless of CDC guidelines. It's the right thing to do. And this next with Rick Baldwin, who is parent of 4 children in the district. I write to you today in despair. Nearly a year has passed since our schools were shuttered, and we have yet to fully reopen despite the overwhelming scientific evidence that COVID-19 is not spread in schools. The lost academic, social, and emotional growth that our children, our most precious gift, have suffered is immeasurable. We will see the ill effects of these terrible policy decisions for years to come, and it didn't have to be this way. What's worse is that much of our community seems to have given up on in-person learning this school year. There are even hints that this apathy will carry over into next September. And what are our children learning? That it's just easier to stay home. I ask you to please bring back in-person learning 5 full days a week. Teachers and students are safer from COVID-19 in their school buildings than they are out in the community. We need you as leaders to encourage our families to return to our classroom. Online learning is a poor substitute for the kind of education that the Suffern Central School District used to provide just a year ago. Thank you for your consideration. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to everybody who submitted their comments. Closing comments? Superintendent?
Yes, I have a few. So first, a couple of these were mentioned by our student reporters. I want to congratulate our students who were recognized by Rockland Community College with the Black Achievement Awards. We had a number of high school and middle school students who earned that distinction. I had the pleasure last night of joining the Town of Ramapo special workshop relating to the Police Reform and Reinvention Collaborative. And I had the opportunity on behalf of the district to speak about the really strong and important relationship we share with the Ramapo Police Department. I cited the number of programs they provide for us in typically Adopt a Cop, DARE, the SRO, of course, the youth programs at the high school, the youth court, and spoke about how we appreciate the police officers' frequent visits to our school buildings. We find it reassuring. And we really look forward. A lot of these programs have been curtailed during the pandemic. And I reiterated to the town the importance of reinstating those programs as we move forward and return more students to our buildings, how important the relationship is. I just mentioned things like how our kids, all of our kids go through our schools, they all know their DARE officer. They see their DARE officer in town, they run up to them, oh, hi officer, hi officer. You know, this is how we want our children to perceive the police. And Ramapo PD does a great job for us. 6 of our 7 schools are in their jurisdiction. And so it was really an honor to be able to share that with the town of Ramapo. Some other exciting events we had this past weekend. Mr. Moitone organized as part of a Lower Hudson Valley virtual diversity job fair. We had the opportunity to interview quite a number of candidates, thanks to Dr. Castaldo, Ms. Cario, Ms. Jeffs, Ms. Narcisco, and Principal Aguilar, who participated in this virtual job fair, and everyone agreed it was a great format. Very positive experience. We have another couple of diversity job fairs we'll be participating in over the next several weeks. Along with what the students mentioned, I want to reiterate that this is March is, in addition to Women's History Month, thank you, Mr. Shapiro, it's also Youth Art Month, and our National Art Honor Society at the high school has come up with just really amazing activities. There's virtual, they're on social media, all the platforms, and there's in-person activities too. So I encourage families and children and adults to take some coloring, and I think I'm going home to color after this and just unwind from my day. And lastly, I want to shout out the Underground Track Club, who's gotten a tremendous amount of positivity, but as a former track athlete and a former track coach, last Wednesday, I went down to the Palisades garage, and it didn't matter that they were in the garage. It didn't matter that, well, maybe it was a little dustier than RCC or the Armory or the beautiful new facility in Staten Island. The smiles on the kids' faces from all the teams were brighter than those I have ever seen at a track meet. Kudos to Jeff Dempsey and his entire team for coaching staff for making this happen. It was probably one of my definitely one of my highlights of this month. Might end up being one of my really true highlights of this entire year. Just the ingenuity, the flexibility, and just how great it was for our kids. So it's over now because the state wouldn't let track keep running indoors, and then the snow will eventually melt and they'll run outdoors again. But it really was a special experience, and I can guarantee you anyone who ran down there will never forget it, and they will tell stories about it literally, because track people love to tell stories. They will tell stories about this literally for the rest of their lives. So on that note, we had a lot of heavy stuff this meeting, but there are a lot of lights and a lot of bright spots, and we look forward to continuing, moving forward, doing what we can for our students, for our staff, and we really, right now, really just wish everybody well. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think we all agree with all those comments, and I will just say that that underground track thing was really, really cool. And if anybody hasn't seen it, board members or anybody watching, I mean, it's pretty much all over social media. I mean, I'm sure, right? I mean, Lee, is on our web, I'm sure it's on our Facebook page and everything else. So if you have an opportunity, if you haven't seen it, definitely check it out, because it's really, really cool what they were able to do. So on that note, that'll do it for today's meeting. We'll be meeting again March 16th will be our next board meeting. At this time, I would make a motion to adjourn.
Moved.
Mr. McKenzie. Second. Mr. Cairns. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned. Everybody stay safe and be well.
Good night, all. Have a great
night.
Good night. Stay healthy. Stay safe.
Paul, March is a great month, isn't it?
Yes, it is.